On the very day my husband was laid to rest, my mother-in-law walked up to me, placed the house keys on the table, and said in front of more than 50 people, "My son is gone. You're no longer part of this family. Pack your things and be out of the ranch before sunset." My sister-in-law let out a faint, smug smile. My husband's older brother had already started measuring the property as if it belonged to him, but just as I was about to walk through the front gate, my husband's attorney arrived, holding a black envelope in his hand. He looked directly at everyone gathered there and said, "The real will has not been revealed yet." Before I tell you what happened when that envelope was finally opened, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. I'm always amazed to see how far these stories reach. My name is Olivia Brooks. I'm 35 years old, and until the morning my husband was buried, I believed grief was the worst pain a person could experience. I was wrong. The worst pain is standing beside the man you loved while his coffin is lowered into the ground, and hearing his own family tell you that you no longer belong. The pastor had barely finished his final prayer when my mother-in-law walked toward me, in black heels, her face dry, despite pretending to wipe away tears. She reached into her purse, pulled out a small envelope, and pressed it into my hand. "I suggest you pack tonight," she whispered. "The ranch belongs to our family now." For a second, I thought I had misunderstood. Then my brother-in-law, Michael, stepped beside her and held out his hand. Truck keys. Around us, more than 50 relatives watched without saying a word. No one defended me. No one even looked surprised. If you stay with me until the end of this story, you'll understand why that moment changed everything I thought I knew about love, marriage, and family. And before I tell you what happened after the funeral, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your city. I'm always amazed by how far these stories travel. I met my husband Ethan 11 years earlier. He wasn't wealthy when we married. He had inherited nothing except an old ranch buried in debt and a pickup truck that barely started during winter. Together, we rebuilt everything. I worked double shifts as a veterinary assistant, while Ethan repaired fences during the day and fixed tractors at night. We sold our first calves just to make the mortgage payment, months when we couldn't afford dinner outside our own kitchen. But we were happy, because every board we nailed into that ranch carried our fingerprints. Every tree we planted belonged to both of us. His family never helped. In fact, they rarely visited unless they wanted something. His mother constantly criticized the house. His older brother borrowed money and forgot to repay it. His sister called us country people despite living off credit cards. Ethan always smiled and told me not to argue. "They're still family," he would say. 6 months before his accident, Ethan insisted on updating his paperwork. When I asked why, he laughed. "Because life is unpredictable." I never imagined those would become some of the last serious words he ever spoke. The accident happened on a rainy Tuesday. A delivery truck crossed into his lane. The police told me he died instantly. I don't remember much after that. Only hospitals, paperwork, flowers, silence. Then came the funeral. People hugged me. They said they were praying for me. But the moment the service ended, their kindness disappeared like smoke. My mother-in-law folded her arms. "Ethan is gone," she announced loudly enough for nearby relatives to hear. "So there's no reason for you to keep living on our family's land." I stared at her. "Our family's land?" She smiled. "You married into this family. You didn't build it." For the first time in my life, I almost laughed during a funeral. Didn't build it? I still had scars on my hands from replacing barbed wire fences. My knees still ached from helping deliver calves in freezing weather. Every improvement on that property had come from years of work Ethan and I shared. Michael interrupted my thoughts. "We'll need suspicious by tomorrow," his wife added casually. "The guest rooms will be perfect for our kids." As if I had already vanished, I looked around. Cousins nodded, aunts whispered, uncles avoided eye contact. It was obvious. This conversation had been planned before the funeral even began. Then my mother-in-law reached for the silver wedding ring on my finger. "You should probably take that off too." My chest tightened. "This ring belongs to Ethan." "It belonged to Ethan," she corrected. "Now it should stay with his blood family." Something inside me finally snapped. I stepped backward. No, just one word. Quiet, calm. But every person there heard it. Her expression changed instantly. "You ungrateful woman." Michael moved closer. "You're making this difficult." "No," I replied. "You're trying to throw a widow out of her own home before the flowers on her husband's grave have wilted." The silence became unbearable. For a moment I thought someone would speak up. Instead, one cousin pulled out a phone and began recording. My mother-in-law lowered her voice. If you leave peacefully, we won't make this ugly. I looked at the ranch in the distance, the white barn, the windmill Ethan had painted himself, the oak tree where we carved our initials 10 years ago. Every memory stood there like a witness. I'll leave, I said quietly. A smile spread across her face, but only after my lawyer tells me I have to. The smile disappeared. I turned and walked toward my truck. Behind me, I could hear angry voices. She thinks she owns everything. She'll come crawling back. She has nowhere else to go. I drove away without looking in the mirror. Halfway home, my phone rang. The screen showed an unfamiliar number. Normally, I would have ignored it. Something made me answer. Mrs. Brooks? Yes, my name is Daniel Harper. I'm the attorney your husband retained last fall. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. I've been trying to reach you. What is this about? There was a brief pause. Then he said the sentence that would change my life forever. Your husband instructed me to give you a sealed envelope, only if something happened to him. I pulled onto the side of the road. Rain hammered against the windshield. What envelope? The one your husband's family doesn't know exists. I stopped breathing, Daniel continued. And before you speak to anyone else, do not sign a single document. Do not hand over a single key, because according to the papers in my office, the ranch may not belong to the people who are trying to throw you out. I took a slow breath and stood up. No, I told Daniel quietly. I'm done hiding. He gave me a cautious nod before opening the office door. The moment it swung open, my mother-in-law rushed toward me with an expression so full of fake concern that a stranger might have believed she was worried sick. There you are, she cried, grabbing my hands. We've been looking everywhere for you. I gently pulled away. Michael crossed his arms. You left without signing anything. His wife stood a few feet behind him, pretending to comfort my mother-in-law while constantly glancing toward Daniel's office, clearly searching for paperwork. Daniel stepped forward. This is a private legal meeting. My mother-in-law forced a smile. Oh, of course, we're only here to support Olivia. Support me. The same woman who had tried to throw me out of my own home less than an hour earlier was now acting like my biggest ally. I almost admired the performance. Almost. Michael reached into his jacket pocket and placed several documents on the receptionist's counter. We just need her signature. Daniel didn't even look down. She won't be signing anything today. Why not? Because I advised her not to. The smile disappeared from Michael's face. You're interfering with family business. Daniel's expression remained perfectly calm. No, I'm protecting my client. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then my mother-in-law took a small step toward me and lowered her voice. Sweetheart, your husband would never want lawyers dividing this family. I looked directly into her eyes. My husband also wouldn't want his widow thrown out before sunset. Color drained from her face. She hadn't expected me to say that out loud. The receptionist looked up. Another employee paused outside his office. The room suddenly had witnesses. My mother-in-law quickly changed tactics. You misunderstood me. I heard every word. You were emotional. I remember them perfectly. Michael slammed his palm against the counter. This is ridiculous. Then he pointed toward Daniel. How much is she paying you? Daniel folded his hands. Enough to remind me that intimidation isn't a legal strategy. I almost smiled. Michael realized he was losing control. He picked up the unsigned papers and shoved them toward me. At least acknowledge that the ranch belongs to the Brooks family. I glanced at the title page. Property Transfer Agreement. My name was already printed at the bottom. All that was missing was my signature. How long have these papers been prepared? I asked. Michael hesitated. A few days. My husband had died only 3 days earlier. That meant they had prepared everything before the funeral. Maybe even before he was buried. Daniel noticed my expression. Olivia, would you mind letting me examine those documents? Michael immediately tried to pull them back. Daniel's eyes narrowed. If they're legitimate, you shouldn't have any concerns. Reluctantly, Michael handed them over. Daniel scanned the first page, then the second. By the fourth page, something changed. He adjusted his glasses and read one paragraph twice. Finally, he looked up. Interesting. My mother-in-law stiffened. What? These documents claim Ethan transferred ownership rights 6 months ago. Yes, she answered quickly. He wanted everything to stay in the family. Daniel looked directly at her, and yet, he tapped the page with one finger. This signature appears to have been witnessed by someone who passed away nearly a year before the date. Listed here. The office fell completely silent. I blinked. What? Daniel slid the page toward me. The witness line contained the name of an elderly accountant I vaguely remembered. He had died months before Ethan ever signed these supposed papers. Michael snatched the documents back. That's just a clerical mistake. Daniel didn't respond. Instead, he calmly opened his laptop and typed something. Within seconds, he turned the screen around. An obituary. The accountant's funeral had taken place 11 months earlier. No one said a word. Even my mother-in-law looked shaken. Michael forced a laugh. So someone wrote the wrong date. Perhaps, Daniel replied. Or perhaps some fabricated legal documents after Ethan's death. The word fabricated seemed to suck all the air from the room. My mother-in-law suddenly grabbed my arm. Olivia, please, don't listen to him. I removed her hand. You tried to evict me before the funeral flowers were even arranged. She burst into tears. You know how emotional I am. No, I answered quietly. I know exactly how calculated you are. Her crying stopped instantly. That frightened me more than the tears. For years, she had used emotion to control every conversation. The moment it stopped working, the mask slipped. She looked at Daniel with unmistakable anger. You have no idea what you're getting involved in. Daniel calmly closed the file. Oh, I think I do. Then he unlocked the drawer behind his desk. From inside, he removed the black envelope Ethan had left for me. Everyone in the room stared at it. Michael's confidence vanished. His wife whispered something under her breath. My mother-in-law actually took one involuntary step backward. Daniel held the envelope but made no move to open it. Instead, he looked directly at me. Olivia, according to your husband's written instructions, only you may decide when this is opened. I looked around the room. 3 members of Ethan's family stood frozen. Not one of them seemed curious. They seemed terrified. And in that instant, a realization crashed into me so hard it almost stole my breath. They weren't afraid of losing the ranch. They were afraid of what Ethan had chosen to reveal after he was gone. Before I could say a single word, my phone buzzed. A notification appeared across the screen. It was from the ranch security system. Motion detected inside the main house. I stared at the timestamp. Someone had entered the property only 2 minutes earlier. The house should have been completely empty. Slowly, I looked back at Michael. His truck was parked outside the attorney's office. His wife was standing beside him. My mother-in-law had been here the entire time. Which meant only one thing. Someone else had already broken into the ranch, and whatever they were searching for, they were desperate to find it before I opened Ethan's black envelope. For a few seconds, nobody in Daniel Harper's office moved. My phone was still in my hand, the security alert glowing across the screen. Motion detected, main house, 3:42 p.m. I looked up at Michael. He looked back at me without blinking. Then I looked at my mother-in-law. She slowly folded her arms. Neither of them seemed surprised. That was all the answer I needed. Someone was inside my home. Daniel stepped closer. What happened? I turned the phone toward him. He read the notification and immediately reached for his own. Do you have cameras? Yes. Ethan installed them last year after someone cut the fencing on the north pasture. Can you access them remotely? My hands shook as I opened the security app. The loading circle spun for what felt like an eternity. Then the first camera appeared. The front porch was empty. The driveway was empty. The second camera showed the backyard. Nothing. Then camera 3 loaded the living room. I stopped breathing. A man wearing a dark baseball cap was pulling drawers out of our antique cabinet and dumping everything onto the floor. He moved quickly, like someone who knew exactly what he was looking for. Daniel stared at the screen. Can you zoom in? I pinched the image. The man turned his head for just a second. That was enough. I recognized him instantly. It was my brother-in-law's oldest son, 24-year-old Tyler, the same nephew who had hugged me at the funeral only an hour earlier. My mother-in-law lunged toward my phone. That can't be him. I stepped back. It is. Michael's face hardened. He probably stopped by to check on the property. Daniel raised an eyebrow. By climbing through a kitchen window, silence. Then another camera activated. This one pointed toward Ethan's office. Tyler was tearing books off the shelves, opening desk drawers, even pulling pictures from the walls. He wasn't stealing jewelry. He wasn't taking electronics. He was searching desperately. Daniel looked at me. We should call the sheriff. Before I could answer, Michael suddenly spoke. There's no need to involve the police. I slowly turned toward him. No need? It's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? He's family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. If a stranger broke into the ranch, would you call it a misunderstanding? He didn't answer. Daniel already had his phone out. I'm reporting a burglary. My mother-in-law grabbed his wrist. Please don't. That single sentence changed everything. She wasn't worried about Tyler. She was worried about what law enforcement might discover inside the house. Daniel calmly removed her hand. Within minutes, deputies confirmed they were on their way. The atmosphere inside the office became unbearable. No one spoke, no one looked at one another. Only the sound of rain hitting the windows filled the room. Then my phone buzzed again. Another camera notification. This time it was from Ethan's private workshop behind the barn. The feed opened automatically. Tyler had left the house. Now he was inside the workshop, ripping open storage boxes. He threw tools across the floor, kicked over cabinets, pulled drawers completely free. Then something caught his attention. An old metal toolbox hidden beneath Ethan's workbench. He rushed toward it. My heart pounded. I had never seen that box before. Tyler forced it open with a hammer. Inside was nothing. His shoulders collapsed with frustration. He shouted something the microphone barely captured. Then he pulled out his phone. The audio was muffled, but after increasing the volume, we heard enough. I can't find it. A pause. Then another sentence. No, she hasn't opened the envelope yet. The office went completely silent. I slowly lifted my eyes from the screen. My mother-in-law's face had turned pale. Michael avoided looking at anyone. Daniel spoke softly. So whoever Tyler is talking to knows about the envelope. I swallowed hard. But only you, me and Ethan should have known. Daniel nodded. Exactly. A terrifying possibility settled over the room. Someone inside Ethan's inner circle had known his final plans long before his death. Then my phone rang again. This time it wasn't a notification. It was Tyler himself. For a second I considered rejecting it. Instead, I answered and switched to speaker. His breathing was heavy. Aunt Olivia? Yes. You need to tell Grandpa where the papers are. What papers? The ones Uncle Ethan hid. I don't know what you're talking about. You do. His voice cracked. Please. Dad says everything falls apart if you find them first. Every person in the office heard those words. Daniel quietly picked up a notepad and wrote one sentence. Keep him talking. I nodded almost imperceptibly. What exactly am I supposed to find? Tyler hesitated. Then he whispered something that made the blood drain from my face. The second safe. I frowned. What second safe? You know, the one Uncle Ethan built behind the workshop wall. Before I could ask another question, another voice shouted through Tyler's phone. Hang up. The line went dead. I looked toward Daniel. He was already standing. So Ethan hid something else. My mother-in-law suddenly interrupted. There is no second safe. It was the fastest she had spoken all afternoon. Too fast. Too defensive. Daniel slowly turned toward her. That's interesting. Why? Because Olivia never mentioned where the workshop was located. My mother-in-law froze. Neither had Tyler. Neither had anyone else. Yet somehow, she knew exactly which building he was searching. Daniel looked back at me. I think we need to get to the ranch immediately. He picked up the black envelope from his desk, but did not hand it to me. Whatever is hidden there may explain why Ethan went to such extraordinary lengths before he died. As we hurried toward the parking lot, police sirens echoed somewhere in the distance. Rain continued pouring over the empty highway. I climbed into my truck and followed Daniel's car toward the ranch. Every mile felt longer than the last, because one thought kept repeating in my head. If my husband had hidden a second safe behind the workshop wall, what could possibly be inside it that his own family was willing to break into our home, forge legal documents, and risk prison just to find it first? By the time we reached the ranch, 3 sheriff's vehicles were already parked outside the front gate. Red and blue lights flashed across the wet gravel driveway. Deputies had Tyler sitting on the back bumper of a patrol truck. His muddy jeans and shaking hands made him look less like a criminal and more like a terrified kid who had followed the wrong people. The moment he saw me, he lowered his head. I'm sorry, Aunt Olivia. Before I could answer, Michael pushed past one of the deputies. Don't say another word. The sheriff immediately stepped between them. That's enough. Daniel leaned toward me. Watch carefully. What? People usually reveal the truth when they realize they're losing. He was right. Within seconds, my mother-in-law began crying again. She insisted Tyler had only come to retrieve family keepsakes. Michael claimed the broken window had already been damaged. His wife blamed the security company. Everyone had an excuse. No one accepted responsibility. The sheriff listened patiently before turning to Tyler. Son, why were you searching the workshop? Tyler hesitated. His eyes drifted toward his father. Michael glared back, then Tyler quietly answered. Dad told me. Uncle Ethan hid something behind the wall. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Michael's face went white. I never said that. Tyler looked confused. Yes, you did. You said if Aunt Olivia found it first, we'd lose everything. The deputies exchanged glances. Daniel simply folded his arms. He had expected this all along. The sheriff asked another question. What exactly were you looking for? A safe, and what was supposed to be inside? I don't know. Who told you it existed? My grandma. Every eye turned toward my mother-in-law. She looked as though someone had pulled the ground out from under her. That's ridiculous. But nobody believed her anymore. The sheriff ordered the workshop secured. A deputy carefully inspected the back wall while another photographed every inch of the room. I stood beside Ethan's old workbench, remembering countless evenings when he stayed out there fixing machinery while humming old country songs. Had he really hidden something here? The deputy knocked against the wooden panels. Most sounded solid. Then one section echoed differently. He knocked again, hollow. Using a pry bar, he carefully removed the boards. Dust spilled onto the floor. Behind them sat a gray steel safe built directly into the wall. No one spoke. Even the rain outside seemed quieter. Daniel looked at me. This belongs to you. My knees felt weak. I don't know the combination. The sheriff smiled faintly. Try your anniversary. I entered the date Ethan and I were married. Nothing. Then Daniel remembered something. What about the day you bought the ranch together? I typed the numbers. The lock clicked. For one heartbeat, nobody moved. Then I slowly pulled the heavy door open. Inside were 4 items. A leather journal, a stack of sealed folders, a flash drive, and another envelope with my name written across it. I reached for the letter first. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. Olivia, if you're reading this, then my greatest fear came true. I'm gone. And if my family is acting the way I believe they will, then they're trying to take from you what we built together. Don't let them. Everything inside this safe exists because I stopped trusting them years ago. I closed my eyes. It felt as though Ethan was standing beside me. Daniel carefully opened the first folder. His expression changed almost immediately. These are financial records. The second folder contained bank transfers, large transfers, hundreds of thousands of dollars, all moving from family business accounts into private accounts controlled by Michael. The third folder was worse: signed statements, emails, copies of forged signatures, evidence stretching back almost a decade. My mother-in-law suddenly sat down on an old wooden chair. She looked exhausted, not grieving, defeated. Daniel inserted the flash drive into his laptop. A single video file appeared, recorded 6 months earlier. Ethan sat alone in this very workshop. He looked directly into the camera. If anyone besides Olivia is watching this, it means exactly what I feared has happened. He took a deep breath. My family has been stealing from our business for years. He held up documents identical to those now lying on the workbench. I gathered proof because I refused to let Olivia become their next victim. Then he looked straight into the lens. Olivia, if you're here, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I thought I had more time. Tears blurred my vision. Around me, nobody spoke. Not the deputies, not Daniel, not even Michael. The video continued. The ranch isn't just legally yours. It has been for months. I transferred my ownership because I knew they would challenge everything after my death. And one more thing. If they ever try to make you believe you're alone, remember this. You were the best decision I ever made. The screen went black. I broke down crying. Not because of the ranch, not because of the money, but because even in his final message, Ethan had spent more time protecting me than defending himself. The sheriff quietly closed the laptop. I think we've seen enough. Within the hour, deputies escorted Michael away in handcuffs for questioning about forged documents and suspected financial crimes. Tyler cooperated fully. My mother-in-law remained sitting in silence. For the first time since I had known her, she had nothing left to say. Weeks later, investigators confirmed what Ethan had uncovered. Millions of dollars had been siphoned through fraudulent transactions over many years. Several relatives accepted plea agreements. Others disappeared from town altogether. The lawsuits ended one by one. The ranch officially became mine without dispute. Spring arrived. The fences were repaired. New calves were born. The oak tree Ethan loved began growing fresh leaves again. One quiet evening, I sat alone on the porch watching the sunset. I opened Ethan's last letter one final time. This time I noticed a sentence I had missed before. Home isn't the place people inherit. Home is the place two honest people build together. I folded the letter carefully and smiled through my tears. His family had tried to erase me. They tried to throw me out before the dirt on his grave had settled. Instead, they lost everything. And I kept the one thing they could never steal. The life Ethan and I had built with our own hands. So, if this story reminds you that standing up for yourself is sometimes the only way to protect the people you love, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't land, money, or a house. Sometimes it's the courage to refuse to surrender the truth.